everyone. We are here with another guest, and I love introducing you to all these people that can help you with your teen, help you as a parent. And so many of my guests, do one or the other or both. And I just want you to know that there are so many places and adults that can help you feel better about your relationship with your teen, help your teen feel better. So we're going to talk about all those things today. And today I have Katie May with me, and she is the owner and executive director of Creative Healing. And she's also a national speaker and trainer specializing in therapy for teens and depression, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts. And that's not something that we've talked a lot about on here. We talk a lot about anxiety. But of course, the next part of when we have anxiety, sometimes it can turn into depression, self-harm, suicidal thoughts. And so I thought it was really important that we bring this up as a topic and also give you some actionable things that you can do or things you can learn or see or experience so that you can help your teen and help your family, help yourself in this situation. And I think that's my favorite part about what Katie does is that she helps the parent on how to navigate this because in the role that I have working with teens, and of course I work with the parents somewhat, I have to talk to them about what's going on and I have to just experience the parent's pain along with working with their teen. But I sometimes don't know, and since I don't work with the parent, I don't have like an extra thing I can help them with. They're just sort of out here. And so, Katie, tell us more about yourself and how you help those parents.
Yes, thank you for that introduction. So I'm a licensed therapist in the state of Pennsylvania. As you said, I own a group practice. We're a team that specializes in working with adolescents and their parents. And over the past 12 years in working with teens and their parents, I noticed just a lot of gaps in being able to support parents in what to do in supporting their teen
Mhm.
at home, making sure that what teens were working on in therapy were actually translating to the home environment. And so I took all of the information from those years of working with teens and parents and I put it into a book called You're on Fire, It's Fine, where we talk about I talk about our framework for how we help parents to help the teens that they bring to our center. And I'm also the parent of a teen now, so I understand it from a whole different side and I have a lot more empathy. And so all of those pieces rolled into one are really where my passion lies now in making sure that parents have the right tools to regulate themselves and support the teens that you work with, that my team works with, to make sure we're all in harmony.
Mhm. A lot of people who work with teens, myself included, had a very interesting teenage life. And I was pretty rebellious and I didn't have, big T trauma, but my parents were just sort of ill-equipped to deal with me.
Mhm.
And they weren't the type of teen that I was. And so then they were like, I don't know what's wrong with her. She's doing all these crazy things. And then they didn't approach me well. And so there was a lot of fighting. And I constantly was like, I never like totally ran away, but I would like be gone for several days at a time,
Okay.
just all of those things. And so, did you experience like that same kind of teenage life, kind of where you're like, I want to help teens to not have this situation? Or did you kind of just go through unscathed?
I don't know if any of us came out unscathed. I love to
Yeah.
hear that story. But yeah, I had what I
Mhm.
would call troubled teenage years. My parents had a very violent divorce when I was 10 to 12. And so I grew up in
Mm.
my teen years without a mom and with a single dad who had no idea how to parent, let alone parent a highly sensitive, reactive, emotional teenage girl. And there was a lot of struggle involved in that. And I coped in unhealthy ways, self-harm, suicidal thoughts. I had a lot of depression.
Mhm.
Thankfully, I had a really solid support system and some close friends, parents of those close friends, and my own strengths in writing and intellectualizing and all those things to get me through. But I would absolutely say that my teenage years were incredibly challenging. And what I do now is because of that, because I want to shorten the struggle for other people who are growing up that way and who don't have to, because I wrote the book that I wish my dad had.
I love that. Well, tell us. So, Tell us the name of the book again, and then what does that mean? Because after I watched your
Mhm.
webinar, I started to understand what it was about. But tell the listeners before they watch that, what that's all about.
Yeah, so the book is called You're on Fire, It's Fine: Effective Strategies for Parenting Teens with Self-Destructive Behaviors. But the You're on Fire, It's Fine part, with the premise is that teens who are biologically sensitive experience their emotions as if they are on fire with those emotions. They are so big and all-consuming and overwhelming that it feels like they're on fire. And so if we think about it that way, it makes sense that they turn to some of these self-destructive behaviors, like we said, self-harm, drug and alcohol use, sometimes binging or other eating disorders or other self-destructive behaviors. And so we're understanding the why behind some of these really dangerous or self-destructive behaviors. And the you're fine part comes from the environment. And when I say environment, I mean parents, coaches, teachers, friends, people who are in the environment tending to dismiss, invalidate, or minimize that. You're fine. Just
Mhm.
take a walk. You're probably tired. Go eat something. Go use your coloring book or whatever. So they tend to
Mhm.
create these simple solutions or minimize the intensity of this fire feeler's emotional experience. And it's the tension between these two things that creates more self-destructive behaviors.
Oh, that just describes it so well for me when I think about my teenage years. And
Mhm.
I never described it quite like that, but I always just felt like I feel things more intensely than other people do.
Mhm.
And then, of course, people were disregarding things that I was saying, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're too young to think that, or you're too
Yep.
young to feel that way. And I was like, I was just furious at everyone all the time because they weren't listening to me and they weren't hearing me. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, as a school counselor, that's what I was doing with those teens in my office is that I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to
Mhm.
everything you say, and I'm not going to invalidate it or say it's dumb or you're too young or you shouldn't feel this way, and then help them work through that. But
Mhm.
I wasn't their parent. And I think as a parent, it's harder because we don't want them to feel certain ways or, because we're just like, oh, I want you to feel better, or
Mhm.
especially if you're talking about self-destructive things, it's so scary. And
Absolutely.
we want our child to live. And sometimes that seems like that might not happen. And so I can see where parents like get emotionally dysregulated too, because they are so scared and sad and angry and all the things. And so I love that you talk about that parents need to be regulating themselves. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I love what you said about it being so important that these teens have validation because that is the first step for parents. And in order to be able to validate, you need to be regulated yourself. So if you think about, I'll set the scene that this teenager has these really big and overwhelming emotions, and they have these urges to do something self-destructive, or their emotions are just bubbling over. If a parent is uncomfortable, if a parent can't hold the bigness of that emotion, if they don't know how to respond, it's going to be all over their face. They might
Mhm.
react with something quickly. They might yell, they might threaten, they might take something away. And all of those things, the teenager is going to receive as, oh, wow, there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't feel this
Mhm.
way, or I need to hide this or not show this as much, and or I feel shame because I'm experiencing this. And so when we look at, I call it like the transaction between the two of them. So teen is showing up this way, parent is responding this way. We really want to think about the parent being a mirror. You're mirroring something back to your teen. And this is my long-winded way of getting back to the parent needs to be regulated. You need to be able to demonstrate that you can handle what your teen is showing up with. Because if you're reacting, if you're freaking out, if you're panicking, your teen's going to get the message, oh, mom can't handle this. I can't go to her with these big, important things, and they're going to hide it from you. And that makes it even worse.
Mhm. Well, and I'm noticing that recently, even schools are starting to, well, a little bit, teaching the staff that the staff needs
Mhm.
to be regulated in order for the kids to be regulated. And
Yeah.
I knew that all along, and I had been telling people, but now I'm noticing that this is more of a push. At least I was part of this monthly webinar for a while with this um, psychiatrist, and she was working with just schools teaching the staff, not,
Love
she would
that.
teach about how to teach it in the classroom to the students,
Mhm.
but her main focus was this is what you need to do as a staff. You need to be having PD on how to stay self-regulated,
Yeah.
and then you can worry about what the kids are doing. And I was like, oh, this is so needed. And this is what we've been missing in education as well.
I mean,
So
there's a
I'm
lot
glad
of,
that,
sorry, I was going to say
no,
there's
that's fine.
a
Go
lot of
ahead.
research on co-regulation, right? Like if your teen is dysregulated, you being regulated helps to regulate them. So being that strong and stable presence, it's science fact, and I'm glad to hear that they're teaching it in schools as well. We definitely want to give the message that I hear you, your emotions are valid, and I'm here to listen to them and hold them, and it's not too much big, wrong, or bad.
Hmm. Well, I have two toddler grandkids, and their parents are doing a great job of this, probably because it's something that more parents are talking about now from the very beginning stages. Both of them are two, but I see their parents talking to them about, oh, you must be really frustrated right now. Do you need a hug? Do you need to, take a deep breath? And my daughter will hold her son while he's like kind of being mad about stuff. And she's doing the deep breathing because you can't tell a 2-year-old, oh, take a deep breath or whatever, but
Right.
she's doing it. And it's that mirroring, like and it's probably also helping her to stay calm because it's
Sure.
annoying sometimes when they're throwing fits all the time. And
Absolutely.
so she's doing it and she's talking to him, and the hugging is self-regulating, and
Mhm.
just all the stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to parent that way, and I think I did in some ways, but I was being shamed by all of my peers at the time because I wasn't spanking and I wasn't like, oh, you're just letting him get away with being mad or whatever. I'm like, well, they can be mad. Like I
Right.
knew that these things were right, like that this is the way to do it, but people didn't understand it. And so they would just tell me that I was doing it wrong. And then sometimes I would second guess myself because I was a young mom and I thought, oh, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. So then I would like think, well, maybe I should do these other things that feel terrible and I don't want to do. And so I'm so glad that this is becoming a thing.
I agree with you. Thank you for doing it that way, even when it was hard.
Yes, because it was difficult when everyone was just thinking that I was a crazy person. And I'm like, I really feel like this is the right way to do it.
Yes.
So, and I think I'm kind of a calm, patient person anyway. So it was probably second nature for me to be more like that. But yeah, very interesting. So you have this practice where
Yes.
you're doing the therapy with the teens, but you also do things to help the parents as part of what you're doing. So tell us like that mix of things that you're doing.
Yeah, so at our practice in Pennsylvania, we have a teen program where we have teens come in, and there's two parts of what they do. They're in individual therapy with a therapist who's identifying with them what are their patterns, what is it that's causing them to have these self-destructive behaviors, or on the other side, what is it that's causing them to avoid school or avoid social situations. So what is the behavior and what is getting in the way of them getting to their goals? And in addition to that individual therapy, we have them in a skills group. And this is with all other teenagers who are learning skills for either coping skills for big emotions and behaviors, or exposure-based skills if they're having trouble approaching things that make them anxious. And because we know that teens don't change in a vacuum and that parents need their own skills, we have a parent component for each of our programs. So parents are learning the skills that their teens are learning so that they can go first. And we always say parents go first. They have to be able to model the skills like your family is doing for their toddlers. So you have to do it if you want your kids to do it. They're practicing with other parents. They're getting that accountability piece and this peer support piece. When I hear you say, like, I was the only one doing this, that's a really hard place to be as a parent. So having other parents who are saying, I experienced this too, and I'm here to support you, and we can support each other is a really powerful thing. So these parents are learning skills, they're learning how to regulate themselves, they're getting support and accountability in the process. And it really does lead to more lasting outcomes for the teens that we work with because they go into an environment that is changing alongside them rather than going into an environment that has stayed the same.
Yes, I love that. And you kind of created this, I think, because you were seeing that gap where you were working with teens and then the parents were like, I don't know what's going on, or I don't know how to help, or maybe you were seeing that the parents, were kind of undoing things that you were working on in the therapy.
All of the above. So when I started creative healing, it was a teen support center. And I said, I'm a teen therapist. I don't want to work with parents, right? And I think there's a
Right.
lot of teen therapists like that. And what we
Hmm.
noticed was one, parents were undoing, not on purpose, but unintentionally undoing the work that we were
Sure.
doing, or they were just so hungry for what do I do to help or change? And we didn't have the answers for them. And so we did a lot of work as a team to learn, to develop, to grow so that we had this program for teens and their parents. And then as a parent myself, when I started taking my own child to therapy, I remember distinctly this one therapist who was like, whatever you want. If you want to come in weekly, sure. If you want to come in less than that, sure. And I was like, I am drowning here. Like my child is
Mhm.
anxious. I am suffering because they're suffering. I don't know what to do. Please tell me how I can make this better. And that was a big light bulb moment for me that, when parents come to us, they want us to be guiding them. They don't want us to say,
Yes.
whatever you want, I'm flexible, because that's not helping them solve the problem that they came for.
Sure. Well, and when you talk about your in-person, that's in Pennsylvania, and people
Yes,
probably have to live in Pennsylvania to do the in-person
correct.
thing. But you have a parent membership that I'm guessing services anyone throughout the whole world.
You
So,
got it.
so how does that work, and how do parents get involved in that if they want to?
Yeah, so the parent membership, which I love because it gives me an opportunity to connect with parents everywhere, it really was born out of so many people that I've connected with in other places. I've been in like mommy groups since my child was young online, and they always say, I wish you had a creative healing in Montana. I wish you had one in Canada. And so when I wrote the
Hmm.
book, I decided that I wanted to be able to connect with people globally and support them. And so the membership has bite-sized videos that are very actionable. It's not, I don't like fluff. I like actionable. Let's get it done. So very actionable videos, as well as a parent forum, and then office hours where I can connect with parents and I can help coach them in using the skills so that they can best implement them in their family. So it's a very nice complement to the book. If they're reading the book, they have the videos to coincide with that. And they also have the professional coaching support to help them to use what they're learning. And so what I found is that it's parents who are seeking their own support, but it's also parents who have a teenager who's in therapy and they have a teen therapist. So they need the parent component of that, the part that makes the therapy work better.
Sure. Now, is there a requirement that their child be in therapy if, or in some kind of help if they're going to do the parent membership, or they can be doing the parent membership and their child isn't getting any services?
Yes, so we're very clear it is not therapy, it is skills coaching and it's learning for the parents. We don't do any kind of advising on what the teen is going through because we haven't met the teen and we can't treat outside of our
Hmm.
state. But there's a
Sure.
lot of research on the concept of unilateral change. And so I talk
Hmm.
about this a lot when I have a parent who calls and says, I can't get my teen to come to therapy, but I know they need it. What do I do? Unilateral change is this idea that if one person in the relationship makes changes, the other person will naturally start to change over time. It's a system, right? So if we change the
Hmm.
system, everyone else has to gravitate into the new system. It doesn't always happen easily. And there are things
Yeah.
like extinction bursts or behaviors increasing as, teens try and keep the status quo. But over time, if a parent is making changes, the system at home will change.
I love that. And I have heard that for so long that, just one person has to change. Now,
Yep,
obviously, it's helpful when people are on the same page and
of
trying to
course.
go in the same direction. But yeah, I can see that where there's been patterns established when you stop doing those pattern behaviors, then, people have to do things differently because that's just the way it is. So I love that you're teaching parents that. Now, I'm going to put all this stuff in the show notes
Cool.
for my listeners and watchers to be able to contact you and get involved in this membership. Or if they live in Pennsylvania, they can see if
Reach
they're
out.
near your clinic. Yeah, that would be amazing for you too. So I'm trying to think like most of, I mean, I'm not saying that people that listen to this don't have kids having these self-destructive behaviors, but
Mhm.
probably a lot of my parents that find me are their child is just experiencing some anxiety, or they're not even sure if it's anxiety, but their children maybe aren't as happy as they once were, or maybe are quitting activities or staying or not wanting to go to school or those kinds of things. And so, do you have any advice for those parents and or teens about what first steps maybe should be?
The first step, I think, in any of those situations is believing your kid, right? So going back to that
Mhm,
validation piece, I think it's easy to say, oh, well, all teens struggle with self-esteem, or all
mhm,
teens are a little bit moody. So the fact that they're reaching out to you is a win already, because they're recognizing that something is not right for their teen, and they're believing their teen, and they're taking that next step. And then from there, I always am a big fan of being able to notice a name, being able to identify, here's how I feel, and here's how I can communicate it to someone else. And this is regardless of whether you're struggling with an acute mental health issue, or you just want to be better at communicating with your loved ones. If you can own how you feel rather than saying you're mean or you're making me feel like this, and you can instead say, I feel hurt by this, and here's what I need, or here's what's in my head about that. It's going to make your relationship stronger. It's going to make your self relationship stronger, because you're honoring how you feel and you're advocating for yourself rather than sitting with it stewing or blaming or shifting to other people.
mhm. I love that. I talk to my teens about saying to their parents, like when they're upset about something that happened, the story I'm telling myself is that you
Mm-hmm.
don't like me or, whatever. And it helps them to see that, it doesn't have to be a true thing. I feel this way and it seems like this is the case, but I'm, opening it up to a conversation to see maybe what my parent is experiencing as well. So I think that helps them when you think about it as a story. Oh, well, if this is a story my brain is telling me, there
Mm-hmm.
could be a different story, or I can reframe my story to be something different. And so that we work on like those kinds of things too. And I do talk to my parents, like if they ask me, what should we do here, or this is a
Mm-hmm.
problem, or we don't know what to do about this, but I do always just feel like they're kind of left out of, because I'm not really actively working with them. And so I feel
Yeah.
like they're kind of like, well, now I don't know, what to do next. So I'm so glad that there are people like you in the world that are helping the parents too, and kind of doing a combo thing in person. And your book, I just got it, so I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. But I watched your webinar, which is what I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have this book right away. And so I'm so excited because I will be learning about things for myself, and I can use it in my practice. I can use it with my grandkids. I
Absolutely.
can use it in my life in general. So I think everyone should check that out as well. But do
Thank
you
you.
have anything else you want to share with us on this episode?
I don't think so. Thank you for doing what you do. I think teenagers often get lumped into being older children or tiny adults, and they are their own special population. And I love when I meet other people who love supporting teenagers, because they get a bad rap and they don't deserve it. They're amazing
Right.
humans.
Oh, I know. I can't imagine. I've had other business people, business coaches tell me, oh, just work with the adults. And I'm like, no way. I am not giving up the teens.
Yeah.
And I feel like a little piece of my brain never grew up. And so
Mhm.
I really relate well to teens. And sometimes, well, even now, but especially when I was a little bit younger, but I was an adult. If I did things with my children's class, like we went on a trip or something, I just wanted to hang out with the kids. I never wanted to hang
Yeah.
out with the adults.
I'm with
And
you.
so I feel like, yeah, I feel like that has just been part of, I'm supposed to work with teens because I feel
You're
this way.
meant
So
to.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you're feeling the same way. And I love that that's what I want parents to know. There are so many people out here that can work with your teen.
Mhm.
And I want you to know, I mean, I think every teen needs somebody to be working with them in some capacity, life coaching, therapy, whatever. And in order for them all to have a person, we need a lot of us out here doing this
There
work.
you
So
go.
I love it. Well, I am so glad that you were with us. This was amazing. And I can't wait to dig into your book more and pay more attention to what you're doing on social media. It looks like all good stuff. And I'm glad I got to meet you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.